Hi, welcome to Fiberchats. My name is Irina. I'm the host here, and today I have very exciting guests with me here. It's Sydney and Hailey. Welcome to Fiberchats.
Thank you,
Thank
Irina. Lovely to
you.
be here.
And we're gonna very soon become partners in crime. So today we're gonna share with you guys some exciting plans. If you watch my channel, you know that I've been talking a lot about my desire to start traveling more, and this year it's happening. So October 23rd, right?
Yep.
We are going to Sardinia.
Yay.
So let's start with your story. Sydney, tell me a little bit, how did you find yourself working for Rowan Tree Travel?
I was going to be spending a summer in a very hot climate in Arizona, and I came across a tour that was being run by the local yarn shop that was heading to Ireland. And I'm really not a tour person at all. But I took a quick look at the itinerary and I thought, well, this is something that I would have a hard time curating myself. So I'll go because it'll give me a couple of weeks in the Greens. Even though I have a lot of family in the UK, I'd never visited Ireland before. And I was really interested in the Aran knits and all that stuff. And when I went, I was actually blown away. I was blown away because what's unusual about Rowan Tree that I found out subsequently and on the trip is that it's not a knitting tour company in the traditional sense where you go away and you really stay somewhere delicious and you eat gorgeous food and you learn you take a deep dive into a knitting technique or you're a beginner knitter. It's really designed to explore a country, but through the prism of that country's textile, namely knitting traditions. So it's not entirely a surprise, and hoping to cover that a bit, that the core business for Rowan Tree is typically being the Nordic islands.
Mhm.
And I would include the British Isles and Iceland and some of the Scandinavian countries. And what blew me away was actually the ability to visit the farms, to visit the sheep, to visit the mills, such as they're left, um, which all gives you a much greater sense of how those knitting traditions evolved and came about in the first place. So it's the mystery of finding out how did these traditions come about. So I really wanted to meet the person who did this. So Heather and I met, and I have a background in finance, and so I was going to help with strategic planning, which was expanding the business, but into non-core areas of Rowan Tree. So countries that I'm familiar with. I grew up in Switzerland, in the French part, and traveled extensively in continental Europe. And I also had my own farm. It was a small, like permaculture farm, and I raised my own sheep. I spun the wool. I dyed the wool with the plants. We actually sorted the lambs, and so it was really a self-sustaining farm to some extent. And what I wanted to do was to find the sheep. And what my interest is these folk traditions as they have evolved as a conversation between humankind and their environment. So it's the climate, it's the topography, it's the geography that that gave birth to the particular breeds of sheep, which sustained the population and from which the knitting traditions arose. And what's it's not surprising that those traditions are perhaps the strongest or the best known in Nordic climes where the weather is, first of all, cold, but they also happen to be islands. So their traditions tend to be protected
Right.
without the influx of, large quantities of merino. So there's been a huge switch in the present day towards the softer, squishier, delicious yarns that we all love, but it means that everything is very highly specialized towards merino and superwash in particular. So the climates that were more moderate and not so isolated tended to move towards that merinoization of yarn and towards synthetic fibers. And as a result, a lot of those Indian traditions have faded away. And so what I love about what Heather does is she enables her fiber ambassadors, of which I am now one, to pursue their particular interests. And my interest is finding the sheep. And what's fascinating about the countries we're going to, in Italy in particular, is that a lot of these indigenous breeds that are getting lost. So we're losing the biodiversity of sheep. A lot of these indigenous breeds are being brought back primarily by women who have these small flocks. In some cases in Estonia, have developed their own mill because their daughter happened to give them a pair of sheep for Mother's Day, and the whole processing plant is developed out of these two sheep, and really trying to, you know, understand, trying to support this biodiversity before it gets completely lost. And it's happening in these countries. And so Haley and I are traveling to northern Italy first, where we're going to be working with La Nalpascolo and Aquilana, both run by women shepherdesses who are protecting local breeds called Labrogna and different breeds. And Haley's suggestion actually was, well, let's go to Sardinia, which is a passion of mine because it's in the blue zone. Um, it's an island. It's very diverse from the northern part of Italy where we're heading first. And so Haley and I met up in Olbia in Sardinia. And for the first time, we'd been talking endlessly. And the first thing we did, which is the first thing we're going to be doing on this tour, is we went to visit the sheep.
And it's
They're
Sarda sheep, right?
Sarda sheep, and which actually are very related to a sheep in Tunisia. So there's the whole Sardic tradition, which I'll let Haley go into more, or we can get into more. But it was really clear this is not wool that you want to knit, or that we want to knit anymore. That's not. I mean, Sardinia is a moderate climate for the most part, although it tends to be, hot. It's not as cold as, let's say, Iceland, and so you can imagine the need for knitwear that's mainly outerwear. So this knitwear that's still supported in the northern climes tends to have a much higher micron count, making it coarser and very itchy, typically. But because it's mainly worn as outerwear and not against the skin, it's tolerable. So that's another reason why most people have switched to merino and synthetic fibers. But what is present in Sardinia are the tapestries, which are incredible. And so we'll get into the trip and what it's evolving, but what I asked Haley to do was, once we looked at the remarkable symbolism that's in the tapestries, the colors that are in the tapestries, one of the other passions of mine, and I have zero talent for it, is design. So it's the mystery of the designer's mind, which is the miracle of taking actually just plain inspiration a lot of the time without something as specific as, for instance, a symbol, and translating it through lots of math into a fabulous knitted garment. And this is where Haley comes in. So it's not just the math, it's the engineering, it's the artistic vision, it's bringing it's incarnating beauty into something material. And that's uh you know as far as I'm concerned, designers are the gods and goddesses, and they're walking in our midst. And it's a miracle every time. When you knit something like a Stephen West or a Hailey Hodge, and you realize how their minds work to get this into the design. So Haley promises me that this organ that I do not have is that she's going to help teach you how to actually work it and develop it. And so I'm going to hand
Actually,
that.
like super excited about this workshop, and Haley will gonna go into details of the workshop that you're offering. But first, tell us a little bit about how you found yourself in this company.
Yeah, so I've been knitting and crocheting for a long time, and also the design organ that Sydney's been talking
Mhm.
about. I've had it since I was really young. I've always been really curious. So I've always been recreating everything to make it in my own style. So becoming a designer in 2020 was really natural. It was something that was just going to happen one of these days, and just had to put my head to it. So I live here in Italy. I moved here in 2017, and I've been I'm an artist first, and I would say a knitter second. Knitting was always my hobby until it became a part of my more of my job when I decided to actually take that leap to design more. And so I am here in Florence in an area where we have a really great wealth of yarn. I mean, in the Prato area, Tuscany area, it's where 90% of the world's yarn is actually spun. So a majority of the large companies, or even a lot of the bases that a lot of dyers use, it is all being made in my backyard. So being this close to that culture was also incredible. And through that, I found my way to a woman named Donna Galletta, who is a part of the Knit Victim Association here in Italy. And she's created basically the first weekend experience for yarn and for knitters to come and have an Italian, how would you call it? Is it Italian conference? Just like Barcelona has theirs, there's many throughout Europe. Italy didn't have one until she started it. And through her, actually, she found Sydney. And I'm not quite sure how their connection began, but I just got this like phone call from Donna saying, I think I'm going to change your life. I found you a job. And I was like, okay, give me more information. She put me in touch with Sydney. That was another one of those moments. I remember telling my mom, I was like, I think I'm gonna do something really cool next year. I just have this itch that it's gonna happen. And that's when also Sydney had asked me if I would like to be a fiber ambassador for Rowan Tree Travel. And it all worked out because they already wanted to come to Italy. And I'm able to step in as someone who's already pretty grounded in I guess, in the yarn world here in Florence and in Tuscany area. And then also being bilingual now, I've studied intensively in Italian. So to be able to live in both worlds to help navigate a trip like this, it was just a happy fit. Um, so yeah, when we decided to go to Sardinia, it was one of my first ever experiences to be working, but not realize that you're working because you're just having so much fun. Because I feel like designing a trip, we just design basically what we really want to do, and hopefully others want to do it with us. So
Oh, let's
that's
talk
how I
about
feel.
the itinerary because I was sold the second I looked through that itinerary. I was like, yes, yes, yes. So it starts with day one. And usually when people come to the knitting tours or like retreats, day one is the day of like relaxation and you just have a drink in your hotel and call it the day. Not on this trip. Let's talk about the first day.
Not on any Rowan tree trip, I don't think,
We
actually.
hit the ground
Yeah.
running.
Yeah. We do, yeah. So I think day one, Haley found a lovely spot for us where we actually got to visit the sheep. This is where it all started. So we start with the sheep. So we're going to La Fuente de Burgos, which is not too far from Olbia, where we land. And we will go and visit those sheep and see the wool. I think we might have a chance to taste cheese as well. So the sheep that are raised on Sardinia are not primarily raised for meat, which is often happens, but also for the tapestry. So we'll start with day one with the sheep. And then what's really key, and I don't know whether you want to talk about this, Haley. I've done a little bit of research, but I think you're better prepared, is the actual culture that gave rise to the symbols and the tapestries that we're going to be seeing.
Yeah, so we're really interested in how these tapestries are being made. And it really just starts with the yarn that they're being made with, and how it's all hand dyed, and then creating a lot of the we would say that they had mystical creatures. There's a lot of symbols and geometric designs that we actually see repeated today that were a part of a culture centuries ago. We're talking about the Nuragic people who were native to Sardinia, and we're creating these symbols for connection between them and God, or a connection between them and the other people or other stories that they were trying to tell. And we can see a lot of that similarity through the things that we use every day today. So like the symbol for the Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. These are symbols that they were using hundreds of years ago in these tapestries, and it's really interesting to see the how how technology has improved in some ways, but in the same way, we always go back to our roots. And these tapestries have a lot of beautiful symbolism.
Oh,
Mm.
that's super interesting. I didn't realize that we can find those symbols in the tapestries.
Absolutely. And what's interesting, so there was a lot of traffic through Sardinia because it was one of the main trade routes. So it has a large Paleolithic time frame, the Nuragic peoples, but they had a harmonious relationship with the Phoenicians who were trading with them, with the Carthaginians, with the Byzantine Rome. The Visigoths went through. So that runic symbol of Bluetooth, which is actually a Norse rune, shows up in Sardinia, and that's amongst others that are. And I think Haley, as I recall it, there was a large matriarchal um, thread that runs through of the goddess and the divine. It wasn't purely just the patriarchal, the traditional patriarchal Christian symbolism. There was a lot of pagan symbolism, a lot of very matriarchal that was overlaid with all of these other different cultures. And the other thing that we should talk about is really the colors that are actually in a way initially shocking, right? I mean, you've got some, I don't know whether you have seen them, but they are these bright yellows and these dark blacks. So it's highly unusual for ancient tapestries.
And I find that also when I looked at that itinerary, I was like, okay, we're going to see sheep. We're going to go to tapestry museum. We're going to see how the natural dyes are created. We're going to have the design workshop. We're going to have visit archaeological sites. We're going to have a boat tour around Sardinia. We're going to have some wine tasting. I mean, like, what else can one dream about?
Exactly.
Exactly.
We'll start off also like making cheese in a traditional way from the sheep's milk. So we'll have that opportunity to like pet the sheeps and then go and have that experience while we're also having a nice dinner together. Um, and then yeah, and then the second day is where we actually get into is that the day that we actually get into all of the dyeing and we go to see a lot of the tapestries?
I believe so. It's not the second, it's the third
Okay.
along that line.
Oops.
Yeah.
I've skipped
And
Well,
the
we
night.
actually,
you know
what
what
we,
else? You know what
the
else is
second,
happening on the third day? It's
the
going to be
second,
my birthday.
oh, is the third day is your birthday?
Oh,
Oh my,
that's so exciting.
So the third day,
so,
I get to try all these things and celebrate my birthday.
so is that the 25th of
25th.
October? Yeah, wow. So on the second day is actually visiting the museum where
Yeah.
you will see these tapestries and some originals and some modern takes, and then we go directly into the dyeing workshop. So you'll get to see these remarkable colors and have a hand at it yourself with the dyeing workshop. And then the third day is also, remember, this is when Rowan she travels, we always take forays into what specifically is, to use the French word terroir, what is specific to that island, and it may not seem to relate directly to the knitting traditions, but does have an effect. So one of the things that you're going to see a lot of is black in the tapestries, black and yellow. So our hope is that we'll have enough time, and we're not sure to go and visit the Obsidian Museum because there's a lot of obsidian on Sardinia, and then of course we're going to be spending our lunch or dinner in the vines. So the Sardinian wine is actually a very special wine. It is a blue zone. This particular center of Mammayada is very known for its food and its specialties. And so we're going to be taking more of a dive into what is Sardinian beyond wool and fiber.
Tell us a little bit about the Blue Zone. What does it mean for the viewers who are not familiar with it?
So, there's considered five places in the world where people live the longest. And so studies have shown that through their lifestyle, their diet, the way that they live their lives in general are not just healthy, but healthy with the fact that they're very connected to their communities. They're they're hard workers, but at the same time, they're living in areas where they're eating really well and all these fresh fruits and vegetables. And Sardinia happens to be an isolated island that is one of the five blue zones. So hopefully we'll meet some very old people while we're there because it's also a concentration in some of the cities we'll be visiting where some of the oldest people in the world are living. We're talking about over 100, 110 years old. People who are also living without assistance, they were living in health. And so basically, the curiosity was wondering what is the secret to this youthful life to be able to live so long. And most of them are drinking good wine every day. They're eating fresh fruits from their garden and they're chatting with their best friends. And a lot of them are also knitting, weaving. So they're living their best lives, and we want to be a part of. Well, we want to also explore what that means too.
I'm sure you want to come with us, have that good wine,
Yeah.
chat with friends and meet with us, and we're gonna live longer from this trip also.
Yeah. And I think
Absolutely.
one of the other things that I love that Rowan Tree does is really where we stay is important. Even though we're on the road quite a bit, it's lovely to come back to somewhere truly fabulous in this particular case, right? I mean, this this particular hotel, and it's unusual for us because we tend to travel around a country, whereas we're going to have a home base, and it's a gorgeous spot on in Sardinia, and their food, their offerings, their comfort level is just very supportive of everything else that we're going to be seeing. So that's also lovely. They're not chain hotels. We don't stay in chain hotels. We stay in places that are unique to that area, but also are, well, should we say, very comfortable.
Let's talk about the third day then. What's happening on day three?
Being day three is the day that we spend visiting some of the landscapes of Sardinia, as well as the lunch and the vines. But I think it's day four that you're getting to, which is the day after, and that's where we start with Hailey.
Okay, Hailey, tell us about this workshop because I'm super excited. I told you before we started this interview that when I saw that workshop, I was like, this is exactly what I wanted to learn how to do. So tell us about it.
So I'm bringing together all of the experiences that we have already done together. So basically, we're gonna see everything in the museum, see a lot of ancient tapestries, understand a lot of the symbolism. Then we're gonna go and actually hand dye some of our own yarns and understand the types of fibers that are used for these tapestries and fibers that are a little bit easier on our hands as well. And we'll have all of these natural dyes. And with all of these colors, we're going to come back and start to design our own version of these tapestries, but in a small object. So I'm going to propose either we work with small swatches or we can make something small like a cowl, but to create our own charts based off of all of the things that we just saw. So we're diving into the weaving world when we're in Sardinia, but us as knitters, we want to take that inspiration and move it into a way that makes it tactile and something beautiful that we can make. And my course is really just understanding how charts work and how color work works. And we'll do a little bit of also the mechanics behind color work, but majority of it is going to be learning how to design your own color work chart based off of inspiration that we already have. So I'll have definitely some examples of saying like if we want to try and create this symbol that we saw in this specific tapestry, this is how in the knitting chart we would have to adjust for that because we're going to be working all with small little points. It'll be a little bit different than with the weaving, but we'll still be able to gather all of the geometric and the pretty colors. We'll be able to find our own way with knitting. And then with this chart, you can do anything you want with it. You could turn it into a yoke for a sweater, or it can become color work in the body and in the body of a cardigan. It can become an accessory. You can work it into a pair of gloves.
Mm.
So the idea is that we're starting off with the very core of design, which is the what do we want to see when we have that object? And it's going to be based off of the color work that we find out in the tapestries.
Yeah, are you terrified as much as I am?
No, tell me.
Terrified. I'm so beyond terrified. And I don't want to say disbelieving, but it will be. I'm sure magic will happen. I'm sure.
I
I
feel like it's
promise
so
it's not.
I
empowering.
trust. All I can say is I trust Hailey. I've traveled with her. I trust her. I
In
trust her
Hailey with
completely. She
trust.
assures me that this is an important step to take in my self-development. So I'm planning on taking it.
I believe that because I sort of like decided to dabble in design last year, and the sense of empowerment that it gives you is just undescribable. So I'm actually beyond excited. I hope I can do it. I'm sure it's going to be beautiful regardless of whether it looks exactly like whatever symbol we'll find or not, but it's
Yeah.
definitely going to be a very interesting learning experience.
Yeah. Well, I do think we were, Haley, we were blown away by those tapestries because they are so ancient and they look so modern. It's hard to reckon
Absolutely.
that the Nuragic civilization it was present in Sardinia in the 18th century BCE. And these have heavily influenced by all these things that we've talked about, but they're really stunning, and you will see, and some of them seem, you know, they're startling in terms of the color. So that's where we thought we still have to come, but it makes perfect sense that Hailey would help us translate some of these things from the woven designs to a knitted design. So yeah, yeah.
So then the day 5, there is actually a boat trip, right?
Our last day is the boat trip. So I think we're going to have 3 days of mining Hailey for this information of how we're going to get this actually uh,
With
onto
break.
our needles. But we'll be doing that in the morning, and then in the afternoon we'll be taking a trip somewhere specific, either to one of the other remarkable archaeological sites, or to eat something special in particular, or taste something remarkable, and then on the last day, that's when we take our boat trip. And that's going to be, well, I should say that the boat trip, we are going in October, so there's always a risk, unfortunately, with a boat trip. And if it's not the boat trip, we'll be doing something else. It has to be weather compliant. So we're going to all cross our fingers and hope that that comes about. But the boat trip will take us around the eastern coast of Sardinia, a place called Calagonone, and we'll be visiting some of the interesting landscape highlights of that eastern coast of Sardinia
So,
with lunch on the beach. That's the plan. We have a lunch planned on the beach there. So
oh, that's so exciting.
yeah.
So if somebody's sitting and thinking like, why should I go with Rowan Tree Travels? Like, why should I go to Sardinia? Give them your elevator speech.
It's a retreat to dive into something so unique and special. We're talking about enjoying an experience of this thread of women who have been creating these tapestries since the beginning of time, and we're still following that same thread. If you're someone who's interested in learning something while also in being in paradise, enjoying incredible food, incredible wine, but also good company, and to meet people from this new culture that is just, it's so rich. Honestly, it's gonna be the best 6 days. We're gonna love it.
I find that there's nothing much to add other than to be surrounded by beauty and to face your worst fear of not being able to design.
No, I promise you.
Overcome it. Overcome it surrounded by, people who are all inspired to be makers and to create and to support what is beautiful in the world.
And it's also that thread between the generations because you feel like even though you are now in, today's day, sitting home and knitting, you're still connected to those ancient tapestries because like it's all, one stitch at the time, one thread at the time, the dyeing process, there's like so much continuity through that. and you feel like you are part of history.
Yeah.
And that we're gonna turn designers. We're gonna continue that tradition.
Absolutely. No, I promise you, it is for anyone who is scared about jumping into designing or understanding how color work works, I promise you this is you'll come away from the week being like, I had no clue that I had it in me, and it was so much easier than I thought. I promise you, everybody,
Yeah.
don't have any fear. It's gonna be really fun.
That's what I'm hanging on to for sure. Yeah.
I
But
mean,
you know, even so, even if you don't take away, if you don't become a designer, I mean, I have a total respect for design. You have a better understanding. It's a better education. You just are a better knitter, I think, or you're a more informed artist.
plus you get to see behind the scenes, right? You get to
Hmm.
see what it
Yeah.
takes to put a design together, to
Yeah.
actually go from like step A to step Z. So
Yeah.
if nothing else, it's going to give you appreciation for all the designers out there that create all those beautiful patterns.
Yeah, exactly.
What we're working on is strictly understanding how pattern works and how colors work together and how contrast is going to help us. It's not, we're not diving into a lot of math with this one. It's going to be, yeah, we're not going to be designing the whole sweater. We're going to teach you how to like augment a sweater to create something completely different with color work. So don't be scared.
I find that, like, when you're going to visit a kindergarten, they have no fear. They just like you give them a pencil and they are artists. So I think it's gonna allow us the opportunity to feel the same, to
Yes.
into our creative inner child.
I'm definitely going to be handing everybody colored pencils. That's how we're starting. So get excited.
Well, let's talk a little bit about like what's included in this package and how people can find all the information about it and like detailed itinerary and all that stuff.
So the website, www.rowentreetravel.com, is the best place to go. Our trips, and you will scroll through them, and you will find knitting in Sardinia. What's included is the all local transportation. Once you arrive in Sardinia, you will be having one really, in addition to breakfast, there'll be at least one meal provided a day in a lovely setting. The design workshop, the materials for the design workshop, everything you need to just relax and have a fabulous time, essentially.
Yeah, your lodging is all included, and all of the workshops, all of the museums, entries to anything that we
Mhm.
experience together is all included.
And the boat trip, that's all included. Yes, thank you, Hailey. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm beyond excited. I don't know about you guys, but
Oh,
I'm so happy to celebrate my birthday with two of you and everybody
Okay.
who's coming along. So I hope you guys who are watching us will check your calendar, see if you're not too busy at the end of October, and click that button that I'm gonna put in the description of this video, a link to this trip. So check it out because there's only a few spots left from what I saw. So don't wait too long, just check it out, see if you can join us, and we'll celebrate my birthday all together while
exactly. It'd be great. Yeah.
Great.
it's this is going to be my first trip with Rowan Tree Travel, but not the last one. So we'll be
Yes.
talking about 2026 and 2027, and I can't wait to tell you all about it. So that's coming soon. But meanwhile, let's go to Sardinia together.
Yeah,
Yay.
can't wait.